But there's a mistake we're making. Which is good. Which is good. We want these people to be ready to Western, we ready to Northern, we ready then you come. That's an achievement.
Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Men tend to move faster at night.
When people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality.
So what I'm saying is,
That's a quick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that.
can we speak more?
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy. We are several nations put it together.
Why don't you appreciate that? What if it fails? I'm happy. I'm a good lawyer because I mean it's not in the power. The parish development committee is functional. It is there. But there is a parish chief that the beneficiaries do exist. So we look at expenditure. We don't look at revenue. And that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance.
Your fountain of new knowledge, flowing into the mass body of knowledge.
First get the knowledge of Bukedia, how they want to be modernized.
Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
We return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening, listeners, and happy Women's Day. Today, behind the headlines, I would like to start by thanking Charles Odongoto for stepping back and giving us this opportunity to have a women-only panel. Ladies, nice to have you. With me on the panel tonight, I have Professor Sarah Sali. She's the Dean of Students, School of Women and Gender Studies of Makerere University. We have Brenda Akia, United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Her Excellency, Brenda Akia. We have Ms. Damali, Chief Programs and Project Officer at Private Sector Foundation. We have Ms. Kutesa. She's the founder and CEO of Zimba Women. She's a computer engineer. We have Dr. Patricia Okia Achan, Deputy Inspector General of Government. Nice to have you with us. We shall be streaming live via YouTube, so please feel free to join us. You can also join the discussion via our hashtag on UBC Behind the Headlines. On Twitter, you can send a message via SMS on 070-960-259-2. And I'm your host, Dr. Patricia Listo. I'm board chair for Uganda Media Women's Association. I'm also a board director for the Vision Group. Thank you, listeners. So today, ladies, is our day, the International Women's Day. And the theme international has been digital, innovation, technology for gender and equality. That comes a lot with it. Questions is, as Ugandans, as Ugandan ladies, are we ready for the transformation? Are we transforming with the times? And there are those other issues that we deal with as we thought before. Is technology good for us as women? Is cyberspace safe for us as we thought? So these are some of the issues. Also, as leaders, you're accomplished leaders in your own rights. It would also be great to have insight into those special spaces. So I will start with Dr. Patricia. As a human rights activist, you've championed so many causes. You've written so many manuals, guiding principles, policies, and right now you're Deputy Inspector General of Police. How has this journey been? I know you're also interested in ethics, values, and anti-corruption, some of the issues really surrounding us at the moment. Looking back, do you think you took the right path? Did you have the right support mechanism? What has your journey been?
Thank you very much, Patricia, my namesake. I'm Deputy Inspector General of Government and not police. I would like to, first of all, say good evening to the viewers and listeners out there, and happy International Women's Day. because this is International Women's Day. It's a day when we recognize and get to celebrate the women and the girls out there who have made some tremendous achievement in the line of promoting and protecting human rights, in the line of creating awareness on the progress made so far in achieving gender equality. Because with women on the limelight or on the front line, you realize that the challenges we're having in our country today can be fully achieved, because you realize that we, the mothers, we, the women, are used to multitasking and doing all the things like the moderator has put it across. I have worked with the Human Rights Commission before, and she has described me as a human rights activist. But also for the women today, we are looking at innovation and technology for gender equality. What is our contribution as women? Are there spaces out there safe for us? As women, I believe it's an opportunity for us to come out and get involved in the global technology innovations. Starting from the family, starting from the farmer out there and the peasant person, because you realize that if we improve in the way we do things by embracing technology, by bringing out creativity and innovativeness, you realize that we can achieve a lot. In terms of farming, I have seen that we used to use the ox plows. Today, when we introduce the mechanized way of farming, when we share those tractors we are given in the different districts or villages, you realize that people can achieve a lot of yield and better results even in farming. So technology is a very, very significant innovation, especially in championing the women's human rights issues. Because with technology, we can get to actually change the story by celebrating the achievements women have so far made in technology. Look at what we are doing now, and people can tweet, and people can access the discussions or get to follow the constructive dialogue we are having here and all over the world. Then we can get a long way. So if we have the girls or the girl child started on early, then I think a lot can be achieved, especially if in grounding our children in the area of innovation, technology for gender equality. So we need to get everyone involved. We need to find and support the change makers and encourage this creativity, because gone are the days when they would say the woman is supposed to be somewhere in the kitchen and not out. Today we can be both married, in the kitchen, and in many places at the same time, and be able to have significant impact wherever we do our work. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Patricia, and thanks for the correction. Deputy Inspector General of Government.
Not police.
Yes, I sort of know why that sticks. But let's move on to Brenda, Her Excellency Brenda Akia. Brenda is a human rights lawyer, and she has focused on issues of abusive and discriminatory laws and policies. She fights and promotes and advocates, promotes the girl child and women's rights. Right now, Brenda represents Uganda at CEDAW. CEDAW is an expert on women's rights from around the world. I think it has 23 members. And Brenda happens to represent Africa. She'll tell us more about what they do there. But I would like her to sort of give us an in-depth on her role at CEDAW and her preparation for such an esteemed role. As a woman, were you prepared for this sort of responsibility, this journey to leadership? Is there something we can learn as women as we celebrate our day today?
Thank you so much, Dr. Patricia. Good evening, viewers, and happy Women's Day. It's our day, and as the Deputy IGG has said, this is a day for us to bring spotlight to the advancements we've made, but also not to forget that we continue to put light onto the aspects that we continue to face challenges in, because as we realized from COVID, we had gained some progress, but then COVID came and set a serious rollback on what we had gained. So International Women's Day is very significant for those purposes, and I hope you take time to celebrate yourselves. Getting to your question, Dr. Patricia, I am one of the committee members. I was Ugandan Africans candidate to the CEDAW committee. The CEDAW committee is the convention, is a committee that monitors how member states implement the CEDAW convention. The CEDAW convention is the Convention Against Discrimination Against Women. It's a United Nations convention, and it has 189 member states who ratify it to ensure that member states are able to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. They're able to promote women's rights. They're able to promote women empowerment and ensure that all obstacles in regards to women's rights or gender equality are addressed. So my job, and together we are 23 candidates from 23 members, what we do is we monitor and have constructive dialogues with member states to understand how they are implementing, what legislative, administrative or other measures they are taking to address women's rights and promote gender equality and eliminate gender discrimination. And Uganda ratified the member state and ratified the CEDAW Convention in 1985. And it did present its report on its progress on women's rights and gender inequality last year in February. They're coming back in 2 years' time for follow-up. In that regard, to your question, was I prepared for the leadership, to take up this leadership position? Well, I will say yes and no. I knew I was ready because I had the competence, I had what was required, and Uganda found me a fit candidate to be its face. However, when it comes to the structural barriers around running the election, when it comes to aspects of the time, the sacrifice that is involved, it becomes a different story, because much as the government did a very good job in preparing me, Professor Adonia, Honorable Jojo Dong, Honorable Riem, they did a very good job in preparing me what I should expect, but it's one thing being told and another thing being thrust into the action. So that's why I'm saying yes and no. It was very challenging because it involved a lot of sacrifice, it was very time consuming. It was a very expensive venture, and when you have children, it brings in the question of the balance for women. How are we able to manage family life, work, and yet we're supposed to show up 100% at work, because I also am a senior legal advisor at the Uganda Association of Women Lawyers, and Lillian Adriko really did a very good job in mentoring me and preparing me for this election. But it becomes extremely challenging because I feel like you realize the inequalities that continue to exist, because as a woman there are certain aspects of an election or being at the table that may not be obvious to men, because they'll ask during the campaign, you're expected to maybe say, they'll tell you, please come to New York tomorrow. You can't, if you have children, you have a job, you have so many other things, you just can't wake up to go to New York for the election the next day. So there are so many of those aspects. And then financially, just using my experience and the Ugandan context, whether grassroots elections, whether LC elections, you have to be financially stable to be able to run an election. Elections are expensive. What happens, women already historically don't get the same pay as men. You know, we have the gender gap in Uganda. I mean, many countries do. So you find that the gender gap is already affecting you, and then the time that you have to invest in the campaigning and in the leadership, and then you have to be away from home. So it involves a lot of sacrifice. But as Patricia says, government, and what we saw at CEDAW when the government presented, government has done a great job. They're really taking steps to address this gender inequality. But of course, the gaps continue to remain. Women continue to not be present at decision making because of these structural barriers that make it difficult for them to maybe get the courage and also get the confidence to say we can be able to do it and be at the table. It's expensive, they can't be at the table. So for me, yes, I know the government did a good job in preparing me, but and they supported me through the whole process in terms of mentally, because it was mentally exhausting and draining, but they did hold my hand. So because of and that's why mentorship and support where women, it's International Women's Day, how do we women support each other becomes extremely important, and how do we use our voices to advance the fact that much as it's difficult for women to be, the challenges are there to be at the table, we need to work together with one voice to break down those barriers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Her Excellency Brenda, for that insight. And now we move to someone who's closer to our theme today, Miss Peace Kutesa, who is a software computer engineer and focuses on integration of cybersecurity, safety, inclusion of IT in business. She's the founder and CEO of Zimba Women that focuses on gender and digital transformation. I've learned that this organization provides tools and technology platform to enable women manage their businesses, and she's done this in Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda. So, Brenda, looking at our theme today on Women's Day and the kind of support you offer to women, what do we need to learn? What do we need to pay attention to? And with your expertise and focus on security and safety online, are we safer doing things the same old way, or is online a safer space for us?
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. Good evening, viewers. My name is Peace Kutesa. I'm a computer engineer and also the founder of Zimba Women. Zimba Women is working to ensure that women take advantage of technology for their businesses in line with women empowerment. So Zimba has two angles. We have the STEM angle, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, which is our main focus, because we believe that by having more women in STEM subjects, these women build technology that will be used by the women in business. Technology offers women a chance to handle the issue of mobility, especially like during the lockdown. We had an issue where a lot of our women businesses were struggling because they were not able to move from place to place. These are small businesses where the women need to be at their shops, but then they're also caregivers. And then we had a mobility issue with COVID, they couldn't move around. So Zimba Women came up with a solution where we encouraged a lot of women to go online and trade. Much as women were forced online, they had to adapt. So we're helping them through adaptation, training them, giving them the confidence to be online. Because one of the issues that we have seen in working with women is confidence. Confidence and mentality. It's also one of the major barriers when you're talking about the gender-digital divide. The gender-digital divide is the discrepancy between access to internet and the tools that are available. And this is very obvious when you look at like male and female, urban poor and rural poor. So all these issues come up. But mentality, which comes from our social norms, is one of the barriers. So in our trainings at Zimba Women, the one issue that we talk about, especially on the first day, is introduction, confidence, and mentorship. In adapting to the digital age, women need mentorship. They need hand-holding. Because when you see somebody who has done it successfully, then you know that it is also possible for me. When you see more girls enrolled in STEM subjects, then you know that we are creating awareness. We're creating awareness. We're demystifying the fact that technology is here to harm us. Because in a lot of our cultures, the mobile phone, the TV, everything is owned by the man of the household. So he gives you permission to use it, depending on your financial capabilities and where you are. However, if we demystify this and show both men and women that technology is an enabler, it's not the enemy, it's not something to be feared, then we are taking steps to encouraging more women to adapt to digital. So to answer your question, and really in line with the theme is very timely because I'm a computer engineer. I feel like it's been years coming. It's just come at the right time, especially with COVID, having just recovered from it. We need more women to adapt because technology opens so many doors. It's the one way that we're going to have an equal footing with our brothers, because when you're online and you're selling your products, you're not selling as Peace or selling as Moses. You're selling a mat online, which is really giving you access to both local and global markets. So I feel like technology is going to be the equalizer. However, in using technology, and maybe the concern would be security. And that's an area that, you know, I've done a lot of work in, both in employment, but also in Zimba Women. In encouraging women to adapt to technology, we need to focus on the security aspect of it. By security, I mean security from cyberbullying, but also understanding the challenge that is there in exposing your information online. When women are not educated on the possibilities that are there online, how much data are you sharing? Which data should be shared and which one should not be shared? How to protect your password so that you don't get hacked and your information goes out there. So issues of security are very paramount because we need to protect our girls as they're online. Cyberbullying is a very big issue. It has been one of the causes of suicide, especially among the younger girls. So, and then for the women, people have lost money online, which is really one of the things which, in encouraging digital, it's one of the things we need to watch out for, because digital should help, but also not further create the gap. Because if they are scared of being online, then they'll withdraw from it. If they are scared of being online because they feel like their money is not safe, then they again withdraw. However, if they're also attacked online, that will also work in the negative against us. So in digital adaptation, digital transformation, we need to look at security. And with security, my former boss used to say, the user is the weakest link. So you, the user of the internet, you are the first stop at creating awareness, being aware of your surrounding. It's like walking out into the dark. You need to know which times can I walk out? Is it safe for me? Who is accompanying me? And that's the same thing online. Does your computer have the right software to support your safety online? Are you using the right passwords? Are you protecting yourself and the people around you? We share too much information about our families, our locations. You know, in using digital to enable business, we also have to watch for ourselves, watch for our families, especially our children.
Thanks a lot, Peace, for that insight. And now let me move to Ambassador Damali Salih, who is a trade development expert. You're most welcome. Damali is the founder of Ideation Corner. She's also the Chief Programs and Projects Officer at Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. She's authored and a chartered accountant, and she received the #1 hip hop, is that what they call it? Hi people, my goodness. I'll let her tell us more about that, since I'm getting it all wrong. But yeah, she's an award winner, just like our previous speaker who has won so many awards. So as someone passionate about supporting women access capital to scale up their business, and in line with digital, and this is where we are moving, do you think we are ready? And how best can places like Private Sector Foundation and Ideation Corner support the woman further?
Thank you, and first and foremost, happy International Women's Day to everyone out there and the panelists here. So I'm the Chief Programs and Projects Officer at Private Sector Foundation, and Private Sector Foundation Uganda is a business membership organization. So we have 310 members who are, these are the apex associations in Uganda, including the likes of UMA, the likes of ULS. So we are a business membership organization, and our main goal, our main ethos of existence is policy and advocacy. So in that aspect, connecting it to financial access and maybe digital, also digitization, is that we do a lot of policy work in engaging the government of Uganda to ensure that we give them position papers to see that we talk about the issues that afflict, say, the woman. So issues including financial access or digitization of the economy, and that's in an area that we work in. And also we tend to do a lot of policy work around how can we lower the cost of the internet, the cost of access to internet, but then also how do we ensure that the cost of data is cheaper? So we need to look at that cost, because if women are online, or anyone is online actually, and they're trying to create a job by ensuring that they can sell their goods, their services. The lady who does my hair, I find her online. So I just talk to her on WhatsApp, and then she comes and does my hair. She's created an employment for herself. She's not a burden to society. So there are a lot of jobs that can be created, but we have to ensure that the cost of the internet, or someone having access to the internet, is actually low. And this cost at some point has to be subsidized by a government. When the government looks at the wider implications of, if the wider economy or the higher number of people have access to internet, what impact will it do? So how much do we therefore ensure that we subsidize this working with the private sector? So it has to be a public good that government works with the private sector on to ensure that it is subsidized. But then also beyond the cost of the internet, we need to ensure that people have access to these phones. So even if it's and I'm not only talking about smartphones, because there are 2.5 million users of the internet in Uganda of our entire population of 40 million. But a feature phone, if you look at a feature phone, that anyone with a feature phone automatically has a line and automatically has a digital wallet. As soon as you get a phone and you have an MTN or Airtel line, you have what they call a digital wallet. So you can be integrated into the digital economy. And we do have a lot of people with phones. And we do tend to have, right now, we have the tools to actually have a digital economy. However, the cost of transferring money is still very high. So I was talking to someone the other day saying that, yeah, the cost of moving money between Airtel and MTN is still high, so more people are not doing it. They would rather have cash. And that individual told me that, but it's just 500 shillings on 10,000. And I said, yes, that's fine for you and me. It is just 500 shillings. But for that lady who is selling her tomatoes on the street, if you buy her tomatoes and you tell her I'm going to give you 10K on mobile money, she'll say no. Because for her, 500 shillings is a lot of money. So, and because of that, that cost of transferring money, digital money, is very high for the majority of the people. It means that the majority of the people in Uganda continue to use cash even if they have the tools to actually get into the digital economy. The impact that that has is that this lady who is selling her tomatoes on the street can't actually be put into a financial inclusion solution because she doesn't exist digitally. You can't track her. You don't know that she's there. You don't know how much goods she's selling in the day. You don't know how her behavior in how she treats the money, if she saves it. So you can't actually develop a financial solution for her. You don't even know if she's there actually. So we have to ensure that most people can use the digital economy and most people can get into it. But in order to do so, there has to be a public-private partnership in a way that we all work towards lowering the cost of moving money digitally, and then also lowering the cost of access to a phone, and then also lowering the cost of the internet. And if we do so, a lot of our financial inclusion problems will start to be solved, because then we'll have the majority of the people traceable. We'll know how the behavior of everyone, say in Arua, if you wanted to, if everyone is in the digital economy, you see how much money is moving around in Arua, how much transactions are being made, who is making the transactions, how many people below 35 years old are actually making these transactions. So how many people are actually economically active. So then you can develop even a government service that targets that poverty or that service that you need to provide in that area. So in terms of financial services or financial inclusion, ensuring that the majority of our people are in the digital economy or the technology space is critical, because until we do so, we won't be able to really properly solve that problem.
Well, thank you. And we'll come back to pick on that issue. And I will now move to Professor Sarah Sali. You're welcome to our program. And congratulations for your medal, just like Her Excellency Brenda Kia. We're in the middle of greatness today, really, as women. We have two medalists. They have come from Kirihura back here just to speak to us. That is very thoughtful, knowing about women, balancing between time and their other responsibility. So, Professor, you're a Dean at School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University. You have done tremendous research on issues of inclusivity, leadership, capacity building. I think it's timely now that women are moving, or the theme is moving to technology for women. Looking at those Beijing declarations, looking at the SDGs, do you think we're on the right path? Do you think there's hope for us? How would we prepare better as women?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, our viewers, and happy Women's Day to each and everyone. Welcome back to Chiruhura, all of us, even those whether you went physically or you went virtually, digitally. Welcome back. I'm Sarah Sali, and I'm the Dean of the School of Women and Gender Studies at Makerere University, which principally has three roles. One is to teach, largely to build capacity in build a critical cadre that can engage or that can help further government's gender mainstreaming agenda. That's the reason for which the school was established. So what goes into that? We teach, we do research, and we do community engagement, which involves things like this, but also supporting the Ministry of Gender, which is our, of course, the Ministry of Education is our mother ministry, but the Ministry of Gender in terms of work is the one we collaborate with most. Now, are we on the right track? I think we're on the right track. And to know whether we're on the right track, you have to know, like everyone knows, the history of the Women's Day. It was really established to celebrate women's achievements. Historically, from 1909, 1910, it was really established by the Socialist Party, labor unions, to recognize women's labor. Because for a long time, women's work was not considered work. It was private. 1977, the UN gazettes it as an international day worth recognizing. And of course, if you look at the history of women's activism and gender teaching, the initial focus was on exclusion. Women were not there, okay? And that drove most of the activism into inclusion. Women need to be in the spaces. When women got into the spaces, the next challenge were the environmental factors. The things we are seeing now, that they don't have this and then they don't have the other, and then if they work there, they will be bullied, there will be sexual harassment in these spaces. So those became the environmental challenges. And then you have decades of activism dealing with those environmental challenges and with people coming up to find solutions for how women can perform better, how to provide them with money, how to provide them with apps, how to provide them with laws and policies to secure them in those spaces. But over time now, the focus is really on the structural challenges that affect women being in those spaces. For example, if what would make a woman who has the facilities, okay, she is educated, she is online, she is marketing her goods, and she gets cyberbullied. So those are structural things which are about norms, and it's good that Zimba Women is focusing on that. So where are we today? Today we are celebrating, the theme is digital. And the focus really is on the women who are not yet into the digital world. And I think this is important for the purposes the colleagues before have spoken, that technology enables a lot of things. For example, it enables a lot of access to information with regard to the different things. Are you in trade, are you in farming, are you in whatever? You can get free access to information. During the COVID era, it enabled education. So is there a country which thinks women shouldn't leave their homes to go and study because of different risks? Can they be accessed learning at home? It enables a lot of health information. It enables a lot of access to gathering evidence for GBV. For me, that has been one of the biggest things. You know, for a long time, it was always, he said this, she said this, he did that, she did that. And I think the law enforcers were always lost. And you know, with the lawyers, when they have a problem, a challenging problem where they're not clear, they say they would rather leave 99 criminals free than condemn one innocent man. Mm-hmm. So you end up losing cases based on evidence. But I think with these different devices that the technologies have been able to give us, they have enabled people to gather a lot of evidence, especially around sexual harassment, around institutions of higher learning and things like that, because they have the devices. And all these things are contributing towards removing vices which would have been a hindrance, a structural impediment to achieving gender equality. And I think that must be celebrated. But there's one thing we shouldn't forget in the theme now. We are really talking a lot about technology. We shouldn't forget the innovation. Innovation, like theorizing, like knowledge production, is done from the material conditions people are in. You cannot innovate for a space or for a society you are not aware what the challenges are. So the challenges we have all mentioned here are very important. But now that's where we need our experts in science, in the digital world, to innovate with that. And that's why I'm happy when you say that, for example, people would need cheaper phones for the digital wallet. So what do we do about that? Maybe the government cannot provide for every woman who needs that kind of basic phone, but can private sector, for example, provide them? Her association has, you said 300?
310 members.
310 members. But we know 64% of the Ugandan population is in peasant agriculture. And the majority of those are women. okay? And they're in peasant agriculture, so it means they're still a long way from being like us here.
Part of us, yes.
So even if we develop the best computers, they will not be there. Even if we have the smartest phones, they will not be there. But probably they can do the basic thing. I know Makerere University Computer Science College of Computing and Information Science, one time had a project where they would help farmers to know the price of things wherever they are, okay? So that if you are in Bushenyi and you want to, I have gone to Bushenyi and I want to buy something, before you sell me the bunch of matoke, you get to know what the price in Kampala is so that you know how to set. And that took out a lot of exploitation of farmers. There was another project by Dr. Julian Sansa about WIMEA, which was actually giving farmers digital information on the environment in real time, and also projecting so that they could organize their planting and everything. But these come as projects and they come and go. So those are some of the technologies we need. Then if you're on farming groups, like many of us are on groups, if you're on farming groups, you see a lot of simple technologies people are talking about, which cost like 1 million, but they can weed and all that. So are these things which either the private sector or government should be thinking of investing in? Otherwise, we can talk about the smartest things on the internet, but most of our population is not there. But we trust that our scientists are very clever. So if they appreciated the condition, can they innovate with that condition in mind? So that at the end of the day, probably, other than if people here on the table can afford that hand weaver, weeder at 1 million, but can someone bring down the cost so that it comes maybe to 200,000? Because I've seen in the villages, people take loans to buy a water pump, something which pumps water from the swamp to irrigate, at 300,000. And they spend 3 years paying back this loan. So such things, costs can be brought down in a way that does not exploit people. And that's why I'm happy when government talks. Today, the president, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, was laboring a lot on the 4-acre model. Now, the beauty of the 4-acre model is that it is having the small-time farmer in mind, other than talking about the big-scale, extensive agriculture, which had been a threat to our farming in the 80s and the 70s and all along, because people think about a big farmer who can produce and export and do that and do that and do that. And of course, it's easier to manage such a person, not to even give a loan to such a person. It's cheaper to administer such a loan. But now that government is thinking about the 4-acre model, it means at least they have come down, they've appreciated that most of us are in agriculture, most of our people are in agriculture. So in the future, we look forward to them planning with that 4-acre model, where actually most of our women are. So we're on the right track. Sorry for a very long answer.
Yes, but Professor, I just want to get back to you on that aspect of the 4-acre model. My concern is that looking at, normally when we are considering issues of the disparity between women and men, women's empowerment, equity, I like to go back to Sarah Longwe. She's an African academician, and she has a mode of assessing how empowered we are. And she looks at issues of welfare, access, control, participation. My particular concern is women's access and control over resources like land. For a woman to even have half an acre, what is the reality like? I would just like you to speak to conversations we should be having, issues we should be advocating to, that I'll also ask the legal minds to contribute to. How are we going to prepare women for this 4-acre model in light of the digital prospects that we are moving towards?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I think one, we have talked about issues of access to land for a very long time, and they haven't worked, and they don't seem to be working. Okay, once people get, like the ones on this table, accessing land is not a challenge. So the longer route is educate women so that they can get jobs and they can buy their own land, okay? But in the event that that's not going to happen, how do they live today, okay? It's true many women do not own land, but many women access land. So how well can they utilize, can they take advantage of that access so that in the future they can actually buy? Because you may not own, but once you have access, and in Uganda we have 2 seasons, how can they expand their production in those 2 seasons so that with the savings from those seasons, then they can be able to buy their own land. And we've seen many of this happen. And that's where now we need the technology and the innovation to come and increase productivity, not using the land and coming up with the same poor yields. But maybe with our agricultural scientists and our technologists, they can come up with things people can use small scale so that they bring down the cost of labor, they bring down the cost of inputs, and then they can get maximum productivity.
Well, thank you. I'll go to Dr. Patricia, just as a follow-up to what she's saying, but coming from a legal perspective, what legal provisions do you think government can put in place to basically support these initiatives that are being put in place to improve the status of women? She's recommended capacity building, training, so that you have your own resources should be one of the key roles. But what other policies can protect women? Because you see, along the way, as a woman, there are those challenges of sexual harassment, early pregnancy, that could still deny you. You see, for instance, because of COVID, a lot of young girls dropped out of school. But how many schools were willing to actually have these girls to go back and do their exams? Also, religion was a hindrance. While some schools were open, some like, oh, you know, we are a Christian school, we can't have someone who has had a baby or is expecting. So could you speak to some issues we need to address legally that could support these good innovations?
Thank you very much, Dr. Patricia Lethal, and thank you very much, colleagues on the panel, for this constructive dialogue, because it gives us an opportunity to share our ideas out there. Patricia, you have asked about the policies that are in place. The government of Uganda has got robust laws and policies in place to support women. We have the gender parity. But going back to the technology and innovation towards gender equality, which is the theme of the International Women's Day today, the importance of innovation towards gender responsive technology cannot be underscored. Because today, when you look at the gender responsive approach towards innovation, it means going beyond acknowledging and raising awareness of the existing gender gaps already, as Professor has ably alluded to. It means making sure that women and men's concerns and experiences are taken into consideration and integrated into what we are calling the design, into what we are calling the innovation, the innovative solutions we have, and that due consideration is also given towards the gender norms and also the roles and responsibilities. Professor did mention some challenges, especially when it comes to us dealing with our evidence. When you link it to the topic under discussion today, personally, at my workplace, my core responsibility is to sanction arrests, investigations and prosecution of corruption-related cases. But you also realize that the evidence we rely on is basically digital evidence. We rely on recordings. We rely on voice and so on to prove some of these cases of prosecution. And you realize that because of innovation and technology, we now can have hybrid court proceedings, like on Zoom. They can capture someone in the prison somewhere in Luzira, and we have a Zoom session with court. So I think we have gone a long way in achieving that. But how do we get to support each other as women? It still goes back to what Professor was saying. There is need for massive awareness. We need to empower the ordinary woman to learn how to use technology, to learn how to protect her spaces even while she's using technology, because there's a lot of exposure, like my colleague Akia had alluded to earlier on. But there are benefits of innovation which I think we need to tap from, which we need to discuss further, because if we promote this innovation and technology out there, then you realize, like Professor has said, there will be improved technology or productivity from improved technology. There will be reduced costs of doing business. When you look at the 4-acre, if I'm to concentrate on the 4-acre rather than do the big thing where losses will be envisaged, then I would give a lot of attention to this 4-acre and be able to achieve great progress. There is also increased competitiveness. If we are competing in business, for example, and I have my area of focus, you find that it will encourage many to come, many women out there to come and build or encourage new partnership through the circles, and it will widen the scope of the relationships and even improved turnover and productivity. So I am very happy with what the president was saying in Chiruhura to encourage people to start small. And when you start small, it grows, and with time, from the 4 acres, you'll be able to do the 40 because you started small. But we need to embrace the technology and innovativeness as women and preach it out there so that it is embraced by everybody else.
So, Doctor, I'm going to stop you there because I don't want to lose the legal aspect from Her Excellency Aki, and then we'll come back. I'm just trying to link it at the international level as our representative at international level. How do you see the preparations for women to embrace technology and innovation? What incentives are in place? And do women embracing technology, do you feel that the journey to gender equity is possible? And what legal provisions are in place?
Thank you very much. And just before I answer your question, please allow me just have a follow-up to what the Deputy IGG and Professor were talking about in terms of, we talked about land and also about the technology aspect. So when we look at land, yes, much as I agree with Professor that many women now are able to access land and utilize it, we at FIDA Uganda, and also when you go to ground, you find that the fact that you don't own that land and you're just being given the ability to access it means you do not have control of that land. We go to the field and you find that migrants or refugees or ordinary women are given land to cultivate by maybe the clan. What happens when the crops are ready for cultivation? The men just come and take over all the property, and then you realize, much as you're utilizing this land, you're not getting productivity or the profits out of it. Look at the statistics that we have. The government UBOS is clear that 70% are in agriculture. No, about 51%, most of the women are involved in agriculture, but only about 20% of them own and don't own that land. So imagine most of them are can only access it, which means they don't have control at all of the outcome of that land. Article 26 of our Constitution is very clear that everyone has a right to own property, and that includes land. But when you go on ground, the challenge becomes only about 20% of them, 20 to 23% of women are able to own land, which becomes such a huge challenge. So what are we talking about in terms of ensuring that women are able to not only access it, utilize it, but let's push more, because as Deputy IGG has said, we have the legislation and the framework and the policies in place. So the government needs to really strengthen that enforcement to ensure that we go beyond the provisions on paper, but ensuring that women are able not only to utilize that land and access it, but to own it so that they have security. And remember, in Uganda, land is both a productive and a financial resource. So if you're only accessing land and you cannot own it, you can't get security when you want to go to the bank. So it becomes such a challenge. So in terms of what you asked, I think we need to push further for the government to really enforce the laws, but also, I guess, create the cultural awareness to break dismantle those stereotypes that say women cannot own land. It's only men who should have access, and it's worse for even the migrants and refugees. If you go to areas like Arua, they have a lot of challenges. And then in regards to technology, thankfully we have UBOS produced a book that gives us the very clear statistics. But I know in the demographic health survey in 2000, the most recent that was done in 2016, in Uganda, only about 9%, there's a gender gap that Kutesa talked about. only 9% of women in Uganda have access to internet, compared to 23% of men. That is such a huge number. Like, you see that divide, 9 and 23%. Then you find here, UBOS today in the book that they gave us, it's very clear that only 26% of women, females, sorry, 94% is it? I highlighted it. Yeah, but anyway, the access for women is definitely extremely low compared to men. There's a huge gender divide. And what we are seeing, especially at the international level, and what we are working with Uganda, the government, and at FIDA Uganda, what we're really working on is how do we use technology to eliminate stereotypes, to break gender discrimination, but also to eliminate violence against women. Because you find with technology, there's now a new form of there's now online violence, which manifests in different ways that she spoke about. But many countries don't yet have the legislation or the policies to help them navigate, one, to properly investigate, first of all, to criminalize the aspects of discrimination, I mean violence against women, online violence. They don't have the training that justice law and other sector actors like police, investigators don't have the right capacity to investigate online cases. So you find women continue to be abused, they continue to be stalked, even sexual violence, because someone can follow you, know your location, and come and rape you. What happens? You can't even if you report, there is no, like, it's difficult to gather the evidence or the online stalking. So you find there's lots of denial of access to justice. So at CEDAW and also in Uganda, because I do work with FIDA Uganda, what we really work at is to get governments to, one, establish legislation and policies that address aspects of online violence, because we have at CEDAW has been clear that online violence includes the aspect of online violence in the different forms that it manifests, like stalking, harassment, is a form of discrimination against women because it happens more to women. And I think here the UBOS was very clear. I think about over 26% of women in Uganda face this violence compared to men. So the violence against women in online violence is higher among women than in Uganda. So that is already, because it affects women most, it becomes an act of discrimination. So at CEDAW and at FIDA, we are working at trying to get governments to ensure that even if the legislation are in place, because we have a policy, how are they effectively enforcing the laws and protecting women from these acts of violence, online violence, so that we do not continue to see discrimination against women in this regard. We don't continue to perpetrate violence against women online. Two, we are also working, we try to get governments to ensure that technology is the now, technology is the future. How are you building the capacity of your teachers, of your educators, of your teachers, of your educators, of your justice law and other sector, of your judiciary, to handle aspects of technology, to handle aspects of gender inequality that are manifested in aspects of technology? How are we getting our governments to ensure that if in the event that we have a violation, or in the event that kids go to school, they're able to build their digital fluency, they're able to have the STEM skills to prepare them for this future? Because now with artificial intelligence coming up, you're going to find many women are going to lose their jobs. And remember, we already face a lot of inequality. Women already face inequality in accessing employment, the wage gap. Now artificial intelligence is coming up. How do you equip your women and girls in your respective countries, in Uganda, to ensure that for these technological developments that are happening, they're able to withstand? So it's by changing the curricula, working with educators to ensure that they're able to build their critical thinking in regards to STEM.
Yeah. Speaking of how prepared we are, I would like to ask Engineer Kutesa, as a member of the International Consortium of Cybersecurity Professionals, how prepared are we? How prepared are we internationally? How prepared are we locally? And as Professor said, we're also looking at the women not yet on board. As you're bringing these women on board, how do you prepare them to be online users?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In preparing for digital, we need to look at the foundational systems first. Before we adapt digital into the way that we work, we need to look at the foundation systems. Our homesteads, are we prepared? Our children, are they talked to? Are they confident? Because there will be a lot of things that are happening online that they have not yet prepared for, like the cyberbullying and whatnot. And then also our registration systems, do we have national IDs? Yeah? Because in accessing, like she said, fintech, you need national IDs to access that. So foundational systems, I would say, are one of the most key issues when it comes to preparing for digital. But also, we need to look at schools, the school systems, like my colleague has said. You need to prepare the schools for the digital revolution. When the girls are prepared early enough, at an early age, there will be better adapters in the future. There will be the ambassadors to go back and inform their parents who may not have had a chance at formal education. These will be the children who prepare their mothers. So when technology is introduced at an early age, it becomes easier for even those ones who are not educated to access. And then also there are outreaches which can be done. For example, we had a project with the fishing village women. We organized them into circles, and then we appointed group leaders. The group leaders are the ones we identified as champions of change to get access to a digital device. These particular ones would be the ones to go back and explain to their friends how the digital device works, and possibly how they can take advantage and maybe sell their fish online, be able to save, monitor their progress as far as business is concerned, share in meetings, things like that. So preparation is also one of the most successful campaigns for me is the UN's He for She campaign. So as we are preparing these women for the digital revolution, we also need male champions. Male champions come in form of fathers, religious leaders, community leaders, brothers. I really appeal to the men to help us in this digital revolution, because I don't want to say they give us permission, but that's how it is.
Engineer, I want to stop you right there as we take a break. How do we bring the men on board to support us? So listeners, when we return, we'll start from there, because often the assumption, anything gender, anything women, it is a women-only business. But we all know that women don't live in an island, and the issues we deal with are issues of equity, relational issues. So how do men support the cause? We'll be back shortly.
Select Initiate Reversal. You will see your last 3 transactions. Select the transaction you want to reverse. Enter your mobile money PIN, and you'll get an SMS confirmation that the transaction has been blocked from being withdrawn. And that's it. Please note, only transactions that haven't been withdrawn can be reversed.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
This is our family's pride.
This is my friend.
This is the future of our nation.
She is the future of Uganda, and the policies I enact today will protect her from teenage pregnancy.
She is the hope of our community, and I will talk to others about how we must protect her.
She is our family's pride, and I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Their support meant so much to me. I stayed focused and was protected from child marriage and teenage pregnancy. I will support other girls against child marriage and teenage pregnancy.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sawuti 116.
Let's need to buy some power.
Paying your bills with the My Airtel app.
Thank you, viewers, for staying with us, especially the ladies. Sometimes at this time, we are off to bed or attending to other obligations, but thanks for staying with us. And Madam Peace, before I come back to you, I'll just read three of some of the messages we've received so that we can also speak to those. We have Mr. Musungu James from Manafa. He says, good evening to the ladies. And he says, before you talk about anything else, kindly lay out strategies to kill the natural animosity among women working in the same station. If a lady CEO and her deputy are ladies, all the time is chaos. So basically, he speaks to the women bringing down women issue and how we can be more supportive to each other. The other one is from Andrew Kajukuta from Kisoro. Why is it that women of these days are different from the past one in terms of behavior? I don't know what that means, but hopefully one of us is able to understand behavior Maybe the professor would be better placed, maybe historically. Dear moderator and panelists, I'm enjoying this session. Keep it up. Thank you. This is Aliowako Isaac from Gayaza. I support the idea of women empowerment through technology. However, we shouldn't avoid the issue of mindset change of men who are husbands of these women, who sometimes act as a barrier to access to technology and innovation programs. So, engineer, I would like you to start from that. How do we do a mindset change for men so that they are more supportive of women embracing technology as we go back to the issue we were on cybersecurity?
Yes, thank you for that question. Thank you for that question to the viewer. Again, it goes back to the topic I was talking about earlier. Men as champions of change, men as champions of the digital revolution. My appeal is that the men in the lives of these women are supportive, but then how do we encourage them to be supportive? You know, in any situation where there's a change, the men they usually want to be the champions. They are, you know, because they are the leaders, they are all of that. They want to be the ones in charge of what decisions are being made and how it happens. I'm a daughter of an engineer, so it's not by accident that I'm an engineer. However, my father created a very nurturing environment. He helped us with our homework, he mentored us. So the majority of my siblings are actually engineers. However, we didn't have gender roles in our house. We all did housework. We all played with boys' toys and girls' toys. We all played the same games with my brothers, and there was no specific discrimination in as far as what roles are supposed to be done by whom. So we can all cook, we can all change lights. So things like that, it comes from the community in which we are raising these girls. If the fathers were to enable their daughters understand that gender roles are not, and as far as work is concerned, gender roles do not apply. You know, you can do the same thing that a boy can do. And also, we need to reach out to religious leaders. We undermine the influence of religious leaders a lot of times, and yet they are the people listen to them. They are the voice of authority in our communities, even to the smallest community down in the villages. The religious leaders have a big influence to play. So in championing men as, you know, supporters, we need to talk to religious leaders, especially the male figures. And then, of course, schools. That also creates a nurturing environment for these girls to flourish. But also, it enables the men to accept that, you know, just because she's empowered, it doesn't threaten your role as a man, you know. So that means we need more women leaders standing up, especially the married women who are successful, to show that you can have a successful marriage while also flourishing in your tech career. Because this will give other men confidence that it does not change your role. It won't affect your marriage just because your wife is empowered or just because she has access to a tech device. We need women in business who also have like men supporters behind them, so that in every aspect of life, whether it's business, whether it's leadership in the offices, whether it's anywhere, we have a male who is not threatened by the fact that his wife is empowered. That is when we shall demystify this whole thing of men feeling threatened, that if the women are empowered, in as far as access to tech is concerned, it's going to change their position in society. So men as champions of change would be like a very serious campaign that we need to focus a lot on.
And if the men feel threatened, whose problem is it?
Professor, we'll come to that. So perhaps, Ambassador Damali, as you speak to how you support women entrepreneurs, still, I would like you to tie it to the fact that men are asking, how do we prepare them to support us better? And what Professor is asking, why are they threatened?
No, if they are threatened, whose problem is that? That's my question.
Exactly, whose problem is that? Should it be a problem anyway? Should we worry about these fears of theirs?
Of being threatened. Thank you for that question. I think it's really important. And earlier today, I was actually having a conversation with my friend, and we were talking about how do we change the stereotypes, change the mindsets, not of just men, but even of women. Right, because there's some women who actually still believe that they can't do certain things. It's the mindset, even when they're grown, even if they're not being controlled by anyone, their mind in their own self, they're constrained by their online. So how do we change the mindset of everyone generally to show that women can do it? It's brain work. Everybody has a brain, so any woman can do anything that any guy can do.
Things
so
like if you don't beat me, you don't love me.
Exactly, stuff like that. So, and say for example, like Private Sector Foundation Uganda, in partnership with Mastercard Foundation, we decided to celebrate women by showing people the women entrepreneurs. So last year we were in Luweero and we were targeting informal women. So we did what we call the Women's Day Katale in Luweero, and it was informal women that we were showcasing. They exhibited, they talked about their hustle, they talked about how they do it, they talked about, how do they, ensure that their men are not threatened. How do they, how do they break the stereotype? So we did that in Luweero last year. This year we came to Kampala. We had, in fact, on Friday and Saturday, and I encourage everyone who's listening to come to UMA, the multipurpose hall. We are showcasing Friday and Saturday, yes, 2 days. We are showcasing women entrepreneurs, and they're exhibiting. We invited 150, 250 turned up, or at least showed interest in exhibiting. Yeah, we have that many women entrepreneurs.
Free?
It's free. The exhibition is free for women entrepreneurs, but now it's filled up. And the entry is free, however. So these women entrepreneurs are going to be exhibiting. They're also going to be talking about, so how are they breaking the stereotype? How are they dealing with the challenges? How are they, again, it's going to be public to see how are they dealing with those challenges. And the idea is to showcase the women entrepreneurs who are doing it and change the mindset and the stereotype. We expect that, of course, the people who are coming through, it's open to all. So men, we want you guys to come through, buy goods, support us, and we expect them to see that if a guy walks in, you're a father, and you see a woman who's showcasing a tech product, and you go back home and maybe last week your daughter told you, I want to do tech, and you thought there are no women in tech. Now you're going to see a woman in tech. So when you go back, you're going to be, maybe my daughter can actually do tech. That's how you change the mindset with real actual things. And it's very, very important. What you see is more believable than what someone tells you. So it's important that we have those images. I was also talking to a friend today saying, but why do we only get to see an all-female panel once in a year? Like, why is it now on this one day all the wonderful women are picked up? Like, where were we the whole year?
You should address this.
Right? So, but it's fantastic. At least UBC has done this, but we need to do it much more frequently. We need to ensure that the young girls are visually seeing women doing a variety of things, because then it will encourage them to do those different things. We need to appreciate and showcase and highlight those women who are doing those things, so that it changes the mindset, not just of us, of other women, but also of men, because it enables them to say, you know what, my daughter can do that, my niece can do that, my wife told me actually the other day she wanted to do that and I didn't think she could, but that woman is doing it, so maybe she should do it. That's how you encourage them. But then also we could appreciate the men who support women. That doesn't hurt, and we could do that. So also I was you did ask me about this women in fintech ranking by High People. So High People went around and said they're going to rank. It's the first publication that has been done globally, where there is a ranking of 100 women in fintech across the entire African continent. I didn't know there were that many women in fintech. Why? Because no one showcases them. So we need to do that, showcasing that visual representation, and it must be thrown out there. And we need to take a deliberate effort in it, that we don't wait for one day in a year to bring out all the women in one day. We should be bringing them out throughout. That's how we change the mindset of women, but then also of men.
Yes, and maybe just to speak to that, but also sometimes the assumptions of where we showcase. Like I told you, I've sort of engaged with you several times online, but now you say that we are not actually doing enough to showcase what women are doing in fintech. So I think both people in the media and fintech, we need to work together to see that beyond the online spaces, we need to make this information available elsewhere. And now I'll move to the professor. I will link up what I would like you to discuss amongst others to this very interesting message. First of all, he wishes us Great Women's Day. Good evening. I appreciate your discussion. Regards to his lovely wife, Lucy, Atui, daughter Zalupo, Ademere, and finally, my security, JD Elijah. J.D. Peterson, all from Solomon from Palliser. Solomon, however, is wondering why I am attentively following the program. Maybe I would request a little talk of indecent dressing and the saga homosexuality and lesbianism. And why I throw this to you, Professor, is because you've done a lot of work around inclusivity. Is this something women should be speaking about? Should we worry? Should we be concerned? Is it a human rights issue?
Well, that's not what I came for. Well, I will address it, but I think the first thing that I asked later, and you said it will come to me.
Yes.
I know there is a, we are talking about gender relations. Gender relations are power relations. That assumes there are people who have power, and there are those who are striving to be equal to them. No one who has power is going to desire to lose it. So there will definitely be anxieties when a marginalized group, when a minority looks like it's arriving in a space. So how do we deal with that anxiety? Is it the duty of the marginalized group that's trying to get into the space to get in without making the occupiers of the space uncomfortable? First of all, the marginalized group is not aware what is creating this anxiety amongst the people. Maybe gender, male, women looks quite obvious. Let's take to the other thing which we really relate with when we are doing the gender studies, that's critical race studies. So if it was in the US, is it true if we are talking about a US system or a place which is mixed race, for one race to be uncomfortable because a minor race has arrived? You go to an office, you find two blacks there, you feel very, very uncomfortable. So then you will begin asking the blacks, how do you occupy space without making the whites uncomfortable? That discussion, I think, is a problem. First of all, we need to acknowledge many men are supportive of women. They're supportive of their daughters, they're supportive of their mothers, they're supportive of their wives and sisters achieving. That's why maybe PSU should, and all of us should celebrate those men. Yes. And working in Makere, actually, the majority of the people who jump onto any gender activism thing are the male students. One, because they sincerely believe in it, but also they are ambitious, they are looking at opportunities. And if the thing that's going now is gender, they'll go with it. They'll go for it.
Yes.
So that is it. While others are still wondering, how do we do it without making our boyfriends or the men uncomfortable? These ones are jumping for it and occupying the space which should have been theirs. So I think that kind of debate should be debunked. The other debate which should be debunked is women are scared of spaces and are scared of technology. I think there are very many women in these spaces now. You just need to look at graduation days of these universities and see how many women are getting degrees in sciences all the way up to PhD level. Yes. So people are there. The issue are the structural challenges. But also, as I said, beyond those of us who are in this elite space, we need to innovate and theorize with those who are not here. And I think for me, it's not just enough for our scientists, for our elites like ourselves, to be able to use what is out there in the international world. That is good. But then how do we use that and also use it for lifting our society? That's how we shall do transformation. That's why even if you are an expert at using the best fast computer in the world, you should also be able to know how do I tap into that knowledge as the best engineer, as the best IT person, to bring it down to transform the digging, the whatever, because I know we can. In other countries like India, I mean the high level people think with their spaces and develop apps and technologies that work for their spaces at low cost. So I think that should be done. Then the question you've asked me is about why we are not talking about indecent dressing and homosexuality.
For some reason, so many people asking about it. That shouldn't have been our preoccupation.
I think it shouldn't have been our preoccupation, but it also shows you how society is obsessed with policing women's bodies. Women can never talk anything, and society is not ready to allow women to discuss anything except if you return them back to the bodies.
Yes.
So right now, if you look at everyone on this panel, there's no indecently dressed person here.
And
but that is what.
Over 5
But that is what people, because
speak to.
The moment you speak about women, it is this discomfort that some dress indecently and some dress well. Now, the policing of what is indecent and what is not, what's decent and indecent, actually should be covered for in our penal code. And I think the lawyers are here, they will speak to that. Because even if I thought what you're dressing in is indecent, I don't have the mandate to flag you down. and say, sorry, go home and change. So it is personal conviction. I know there are some spaces where they'll tell you, sorry, you cannot come in with that. And they have the mandate over their space to do that. Then on the other debate of homosexuality, I know it's now a very big craze and a very big debate on the continent. And one of the things which is driving it is the horrors that are coming out of schools. And I think it is very unfortunate, but I think we need to pay more attention with what happens at the schools, not just for homosexuality. Our schools have been centers of bullying for years. And there's excessive bullying in boys' schools. And it gets away. People let it pass because men will be men. They are being trained to be men. Actually, for us who went to girls' schools, you can report a case of bullying and it's addressed. For boys to report a case of bullying once or twice, first of all, the teachers lose interest. You're supposed to be manned up, okay? But you also have a case like what happened in Tungamo last week or the other week, where a boy reports, he received threats, reports to the school doesn't take that seriously, the boy is burnt to death. Now the question is, at the time he was being tied up, the petrol is being poured and is being lit. Where were the other students? Because that day, senior ones had not gone for prep. What did they do? They all ran away for safety. But also, how does a suspended student come back and access the dorms? So our schools have been centers of several vices, of which homosexuality is not just the apex. But ideally, it's not homosexuality, it is sexual abuse of students. Schools should be sex-free zones, okay? Each time girls have talked about sexually being harassed by the teachers, everyone comes in with these kinds of things. You see, they dress indecently, and the teachers get tempted, and then I don't know what. So sexual abuse against girls is explained away by society. It is now that sexual abuse seems to be affecting boys that suddenly the world is collapsing.
Yes.
But I think this is high time the ministry paid attention to what happens in schools, especially boarding schools. Because it made, I mean, when we were in senior one, a student in Namiriango was killed. Why? Because they had this system of bullying where they would tie a metallic cap in a towel and hit their legs. That day he had changed the head put. He died, okay? So let's pay attention to what happens in the schools. Even this thing of eating a grab of a whole senior one boy, you give this boy 2,000 shillings to go to the canteen, but you give them a list of 50,000. It's a way of stealing from them. Yes. So schools, we should pay attention to that. We should not just complain because it's homosexuality. Actually, it is sexual abuse of any student in a school should never occur, okay? And then also training and using the schools to dehumanize the students is against our constitutional rights on dignity and the decency of the human being. So any form that is occurring in the schools should be taken out, and teachers should pay more attention. Schools that are not ready to pay attention to these things should be closed.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I can take on that.
Well, thanks, Professor. And Damali, clearly from what the professor is saying, we need to pay more attention to what is happening in our environment and with the options to access certain materials that technology offers us. Uganda actually is riddled, to me, I feel we are riddled with worst cases of sexual misconduct that we shush under the tables. But for me, I had not appreciated it, but she's brought the perspective that finally that men are suffering from sexual harassment. Then it's an important issue. How can we use these spaces to protect ourselves better, not just as women, but as society, as mothers? How can we use these spaces to lobby and advocate for these serious issues?
Thank you. I believe that this technology, in fact, that's why I'm in the tech space. I'm actually not a techie. I just use technology, I just leverage it to solve problems. But I feel that technology has enabled us, given us platforms, given individuals platforms actually, to be able to say what they need to say. But probably back to a little bit of what the professor says, there are different classes that can access technology. You'll find that, say, a student, for example, in a boarding school somewhere may not actually have access to this tech. So they will never be able to report. A woman maybe who is working in a company in Kampala, yes, she has access to the internet, she knows how to use Facebook, she can use Twitter, so she can talk about sexual harassment. I've actually seen people come on Twitter and really talk about, I'm being sexually harassed by this individual here, and other women have come up and say, actually, yeah, that is happening, and okay, we don't know how much justice there is, because I could actually also target a guy and say, you are sexually harassing me, get my friends to say the same. But the point is that there is technology to some extent for those who have access to it, for those who are bold enough to use it, can enable the reporting of sexual harassment, or any harassment actually, and I've seen some people actually use it. So we could probably sensitize more people maybe to use it more, because it provides a certain amount of protection for the person who is abused, that they feel maybe I'm behind a screen, at least I can talk about it and do, instead of me going on radio, which you may not even never have access actually to have a TV station come and listen to your story, or a radio station listen to your story, but at least you have your own social media platform where you can actually say your story and talk about it and maybe get some reprieve. There was a lady, I think, who was on Twitter who talked about her sexual harassment. There are other lawyers who came to her and said, you know what, we'll help you take up your case. So she got actually a certain amount of help. She got some therapy. There was a therapy who offered to give her, sessions for her to. She also got bullied by people who came and say she's lying. But at least I felt like she was getting her an opportunity that she may never have had actually without technology.
Yes.
So I think that technology helps for some people to be able to tell their stories, and it could be you're telling your story, you're being sexually harassed. It could be you're telling your story, I want to sell my goods, my services here. It could be anything, but it's a leverage. But we need, of course, to pay attention to that point, is that there are very few people in Uganda who have access to this technology. There are only 2.5 million users of the internet in Uganda, of our 40 million population. So there are only a few privileged who can do this. So we need to ensure that we democratize it. And you democratize it by lowering the cost. Because that lady in Nakapiripiti who may be abused, or that kid in school in Nakapiri who may be abused, doesn't have access to this technology because it's
yes,
so
and
expensive.
actually there's a question here, though it's directly directed to the engineer, where Mr. David from Tororo is saying, let the Zimba woman answer. I salute ladies and congratulate the medalists. However, a chunk of women who are illiterate and rural in Uganda, can gender equality be achieved? Can you reach them? Can they reach you? Of course, the other bit of why that category is not represented on this panel, I'll leave UBC to answer that bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Gender equality can be achieved, which is why the UN has the towards 2030 goals. However, digital can actually enable these women to reach gender equality. But how? We need to have inclusive digital access, which covers even the women who are not educated. We need to demystify the fact that a lot of times there's the assumption that because somebody is not educated, they're not able to access digital, which is a lie. Because there's various people online, on Facebook, who are not educated, who comment their things in Luganda, or in Nyankole, or whatever local language that they are able to. Yeah. So these women are online, but what are they using the online access that they have for? So for part of the digital divide, the challenges is there's not enough incentive for the women to go online. So we need to change the way we market digital, not just offer it as a platform and then leave it there. We need to educate women on the possibilities, which are endless, of what they can do when they're online.
And perhaps you could speak to how Zimba women can actually support, because somebody again asks you to explain, how do I benefit from Zimba women? I'm interested, Madam Kutesa. This is Aine Mbabazi, who would like to know that. So maybe you could also weave that in.
Yes, so Aine Mbabazi from our country. We have several outreaches where we talk to market women. We talk to them in groups, we organize them into groups, and then talk to them about how they can have digital access. Among these market women, we appoint leaders, and this leader will be the one to upload the products online for the rest. So whoever adapts quicker is in charge of the account which uploads the products. Then the rest will learn from that person. If we use that peer-to-peer mentoring system, we found that it's more effective in encouraging others to adapt, because once Peace learns, then she can teach Damali. Once Damali learns, she'll go back home and teach her husband, her children, and everybody, which is how we are really encouraging the digital revolution, especially in the uneducated, who we assume a lot of times that they're not able to access or to use it. We've actually found that sometimes these women are so eager to use it that they we've had more success with them than with the ones who are in the, in the urban areas. Because in the urban areas, a lot of them can pay somebody to do their social media. Yeah? By paying somebody, you're actually depriving yourself of access to social. Because you're not teaching yourself. Because you're not learning. The more time you spend online, the more you learn. You learn how to advertise, how to market, how to speak. You network. You make friends. Friends who will help you in your business. So regardless of where somebody is, whether they're in the village or in the town, we have a product for women. Because that's why in our access to marketing, we say customized digital products for every woman. My digital needs as a person who's running a boutique in Garden City are very different from somebody who's running a business in Owino. She may need to reach her customers. Do we teach her how to reach her customers? Yes. As part of our business training, we do marketing. Even with a small phone, which is not even smart, you send your customers text, "Ba customer, nafunye stock, moje." Just a simple message like that. But you see, this woman is using digital. But we assume digital means she must have a computer, she must have a smartphone. But as long as she's aware that even using the smallest phone, you're participating in the digital revolution. Making sure that these women know that if I have a phone number, I can register for mobile money and receive access. You can use that statement of mobile money to apply for a loan from your circle because you show that my business is actually working. So our digital access should be inclusive regardless of your financial capability, regardless of your location, and regardless of whether you can afford internet or not. Digital is not just the internet. It's a device that is online that can communicate. So even the simplest, even when you're uneducated, you can access digital, you can reach your customers, you can market, All of that is accessible if women are open-minded to embracing their digital access without feeling sorry for themselves. Oh my God, I cannot afford this. But when you think, okay, within what I can afford, what can I do?
Yes.
Within what I can afford, who can I reach? How do I network on my small phone? How do I market?
Yes.
How do I reach my customers? How do I educate myself and learn more? Our challenge as women is really we don't seek knowledge. We don't seek knowledge a lot of times, maybe because we've always been, somebody is always thinking for us, our fathers, our brothers, or somebody is thinking for us. But as long as you're open to learning, and we have so much support when we learn from each other as women. A lot of times, I think it's the patriarchy that sells this thing that women don't get along. We have very powerful networks when we work together. We are able to do a lot. Some of my best mentors have been women. However, some of my worst experiences have been with women. Yeah. When we are in a workplace, and I think really this comes from mentorship, which is a big aspect of the work we do at Zimba Women. As a woman, when you're growing both in financial and also in career, if you have not been mentored, you're navigating spaces that are male-dominated. Without the right mentorship, you lose your femininity. So you become, you take on masculine attributes because you're trying to compete with the men in your workplace. You wear like dark colors, you stop wearing your makeup, you start to act like a man, which is a threat to the women who are coming behind you because they'll not approach you for mentorship. If we put in place mechanisms where women are supported in their growth journey, where we don't look at each other as competition, but we are constantly supporting each other, then we won't have those issues of women don't get along with women, women bosses are not good. That's just a false narrative because we have not tried. But if we are trying, then we'll mentor each other. We'll be the best bosses of the young girls who are coming after us, which is why mentorship is a very big thing for us at Zimba Women. We actually do our mentorship online. So we've had like a Tanzanian mentoring Nigerian, when we first put out the mentorship call, it was for Ugandans. But because it was online, we got applications from all over the place. So we ended up with one of our most successful teams is we have this Nigerian lady who was mentoring a Tanzanian. They mentored each other so much, they learned so much from each other that now they started flying to each other's countries. Wow. They established such a beautiful friendship. Yeah. And which is really why we should embrace technology and be open-minded because we can develop friendships like those. I met my co-founder online, People are not, recently I was talking to somebody, he's like, yeah, but these conversations, how do I tell people I met you on Facebook? And I was like, I have the most beautiful friendship of 12 years with somebody I met on Facebook. We started a company together. our children have been raised together. So when we embrace technology and as an enabler to life, actually, then we'll learn more, we'll take advantage of it, and we'll make more use of our presence online.
So technology is the way to go.
Yes, it is the way to go.
So Dr. Chan, just to get you back to your legal framework, Mr. Charles Okeny says it's from Kirihurai. My point is, to bridge gender gap, we need laws that address inequality at workplaces. You find an organization is occupied by male counterparts only at the top. We need a law that addresses the imbalance.
Thank you very much. I will begin by sharing my own experience. When I was working with the Ministry of Works as policy and legal advisor, there are situations where I walked into the boardroom for a top leadership meeting, and you'd find that we are only 2 or 3 women in that boardroom. Why? Because then women were not encouraged or were not motivated to do engineering, to do transport mechanization and things to do with what the Ministry of Works was doing. But today, like Professor has said, there are many women coming up, and they have embraced engineering courses and sciences and mathematics, and they're doing extremely very well. So women are progressing in the area of innovation and technology. But someone also said that women are now becoming a threat. And Professor was like, whose problem is it if women are becoming a threat? But I think it's an issue we need to address squarely, because women, we have achieved quite a lot. But whatever it is we have achieved in leadership, in technology and sciences, we have engineers, we have pilots who are now on the cockpit, we have aeronautical engineering who have studied airspace law, and there are others coming up. But we should not forget our gender roles and responsibilities in the family, because many of us have run away and left that responsibility. And even when they're back home, they still come carrying their titles and positions in the family. And that is causing a problem in the family. Families are breaking down because women have brought themselves and imposed themselves and taken over the leadership roles. Remember a story that happened in I don't know whether it was 1985, the Beijing platform. A group of women left from Uganda, most of whom were members of FIDA Uganda, and went for Beijing. When they came back, there was a total mindset change and a shift of roles. And they expected their husbands to go and begin scrubbing the saucepans in the kitchen and being the ones to mingle the atapa or the kalo, which is a staple food for some of us here. And that caused families to break down because the women were no longer respecting their spouses. So today we are talking about technology and innovation and women empowerment. What is this whole story about empowerment? Empowerment doesn't mean we abdicate our roles as mothers to other people to do, because all this starts from the family. If we mentor and raise children with values, then they are able to come up and take on these places of responsibilities because they are able to exhibit some of those values. They are able to bring up these examples and experiences they've learned from the family while they're growing. So women, why are they different in terms of behavior? It's because of what exactly I'm saying. Some of them have the arrival syndrome. Personally, I am a doctor of laws, I am a deputy IGG, but when I get home, those titles, those positions, those bitala stop at the gate. At home, I'm a mother and I'm a wife, and that has helped me to be able to multitask and double up. Why is it important for girls to access technology? Because if they do not access technology, then you realize that they are unable to even access a lot of information on the internet. They do not feel safe online, and they miss out on a lot. They are unable to develop the necessary digital skills the engineers have been talking about, which skills they need to be able to fit in spaces. They are able to engage in digital spaces if they can access those skills, which basically would also expose them to good opportunities to be able to pursue those careers like in mathematics, in science, in technology, and so on. So I think it is very, very important for us to encourage the girl child, for us to network as women and encourage one another and discourage the PhD, the pull her down syndrome, because it has been said that we women do not encourage other women. Yes. Today I had a mentorship session with the young lawyers and advocates and law students, and we were learning from the giants. We had the judges who are from the Christian lawyers fraternity, inspiring and encouraging and motivating the young ones, because we're supposed to be mentoring others to take on from where we have stopped. When we stop, they are supposed to be upcoming people. You know, even the engineering professions should do exactly that, where we mentor the young students who are doing engineering to come up to be responsible and better engineers, to come up with values. Because Dr. Patricia, we have, Uganda has the national values. The national values were passed in 2013 and put on the shelf. But what is entailed in those values? There are only 10. Respect for life, for humanity and environment. When we respect humanity and environment, it goes a long way. It even has implications in my work in fighting corruption. Because when you respect humanity, you do not cheat that person. You deal with that person with responsibility. You're able to take care of the environment. Today people drink water and throw outside their cars, and it goes and blocks the drainage, and they're crying, government etuyambe, and yet it's our responsibility to take care of our environment. And that is how corruption starts. It starts from school, from this child who has not been taught to respect one another's property. You will steal a rubber, another day will steal a pencil. But today, that child is stealing billions of shillings because he was not grounded in those values while he was growing up. So what does that tell us about this whole empowerment? The women, the mothers, we should not abdicate our roles. We should take on our responsibility for parenting responsible children so that they fit into the society and they are able to cope and they are able to provide leadership, which is responsible leadership, and children who are accountable, because today we have lots of issues to do with accountability. We're talking about technology here and innovation, but there are other people out there who are thinking about, hey, when they come up with new innovations, where shall we steal from? Where shall we benefit from? So we need to curb some of those mindset issues. And how do we do that? We have to go back to the foundational issues, and these are the values. As women, we need to look for them and resurrect them and begin preaching them so that it spreads across all professions. The legal fraternity, for us, we have begun from the Christian lawyer's perspective. I expect that the engineers will also pick up that, so that we are all singing from the same hymn book and saying, much as we are thinking about research, innovation and technology and women empowerment in the area of engineering, we have the values. So Dr. It goes hand in hand with the values.
Yes. There's an aspect you talked about earlier about women and their interpretation of leadership, of power. Those stories you gave of women coming back from Beijing. Yes. And I would like to come back to Professor on those. Do you think we prepare women enough for leadership? Do we prepare them to understand power, power over, power within, power with, you know, all those dimensions of power? Do we prepare enough? Like, we are all women leaders in our own right. Are we prepared enough? And I'll allow the rest of us after Professor to speak to this.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One, I never heard about that Beijing story. I'm hearing it for the first time. It is strange, but it is interesting. Circles, yes. So, but then, if there are individuals who came from Beijing and had that, you need to investigate what their families were like. It was not, many women who went to Beijing came back and are still married today and are still born again today. So I think we should not generalize. I think we mix two things. There's what has happened in this country, that ever since we went neoliberal and the economy became hard, people have to hustle to survive. Those of us on this table have jobs which can end at 5. Okay, if you're in Makere, you end at 10, but we can end at 5. You have drivers who will take you home at 5, you pick your wonderful kids, you go back with them home. If there's a default on this panel, I would have an issue, okay? But what does that tell you of a woman who is in Toninjira Mukange right now on the candle lit trying to sell because she cannot afford a imposer during the day and she comes out to the evening market? And of course, what does that mean? She cannot be at home to read the children's homework. She will not be there to put the kids to sleep. And that's where the biggest challenges are about women have abdicated. So what do you tell about that family where the husband is hustling, the wife is hustling? Practical realities are that they are not there to see the kids to sleep. Each time you hear a house has burnt in the night and the parents were not there, what is the story behind that? So I think let us not mix class issues with gender issues, okay? There are women of class who can decide to say, I cannot do that. But there are women who are hustlers and are being caught up in the practical realities. We have encouraged them go out and work. They are not educated enough to have an 8 to 5 o'clock job. The job they have is the one of market vending in the evening, of doing, you know, these markets where they do market this and then the other market the other, or they are going long distance, they are going to Dubai. If they're educated enough, they're going to India, they're going to China. So there are practical realities that take women away. And if, of course, the husband is used to my food can only be cooked by my wife, that family is going to have a challenge. So if the woman chooses to stay at home to feed the husband as he wants, the family will still have a challenge of finances. So there are issues, because in addition to doing gender studies, we also do family studies. Yes. There is a threat to the African family, not just from homosexuality, but also from the practical realities of the economy. Neoliberalism has hit us hard, and people are maneuvering within that. And as they maneuver, you have a set of people who are stuck with their traditional ways of being. I can assure you, whether those women have gone to a gender class or not, that family will fracture. Whether they ever went to Beijing or not, the family will fracture. Just look at the statistics of families fracturing. It's not only amongst the educated. No. Women are not empty heads. They have brains. They will know an arrangement which works for them and which does not work for them. If an arrangement does not work for them, however illiterate and unexposed they are, they will move on. Even in villages, you have seen this. Yes. So I think let's make families and homes safe for everybody. Our families are different. We can do Bible study for everybody, but families which have to hustle late into the night, let that family also have an arrangement. Not necessarily interpret that as abdication, because that man listened to another high-class man who can afford to provide for the wife to be at home to claim that is abdication. Then your question is, aren't we preparing women for leadership? Of course, I think if you have a segment of people who have not been associated with the leadership, they will need mentorship. If they are not mentored, then they will have a challenge. And that ties on with what we have, what is commonly portrayed as women are their own enemies. Women fight each other. First and foremost, women work in spaces which are dominated by women. So it's natural that any workplace conflict will be amongst them if they're at that level. Women who are in a place dominated by men, their workplace conflict will actually be with men. So women at the workplace have conflicted with women, but they've also conflicted with men. And it's not only women who conflict at the workplace. Some of the worst forms of workplace conflicts I've experienced are between men. And permanently you're mediating between them, okay? So it's not only women. I think there is an unnecessary focus on women because people put women on a pedestal of perfection, okay? Yes. So anything that goes wrong, oh, women are doing this, women are doing, we have to be in touch with the practical realities. That one, women work in women-dominated spaces. If you're talking about Zimba, and you said Zimba is a largely women place. Yes. So who are they going to, where are they going to find the men to conflict with? They're going to conflict with men, with women. So just like men in a male-dominated space will also conflict amongst men. You'll never hear a story of why are men fighting each other, why are men even will chase each other out of organizations because of competition. They are more ruthless. But that narrative, that discourse is never applied to men.
No.
It is always applied to women. But that does not remove the fact that anyone who is new to leadership needs mentorship, whether they are male or female. Because if you are not exposed, you have the experience, and you're given a task, you will mismanage. And if you mismanage, those who think they know better will resist you, and you'll hit hard downwards, and that becomes a problem. But mainly what I can then say is also simply, I mean, we have talked about digital, and I've said digital is not just smartphones and computers. I also want to say technology is not just digital. Yeah. Technology can be, there are those things, like I said, those things which make farming easier, which make cooking easier, which make health easier. That is all technology. And there are so many simple technologies. Even moving people from the firewood to the sigiri, that's an improvement of technology. Yes. Now we've seen them going further to smokeless kind of sigiris, I don't know, with the briquettes and the chips and what, I don't know, they're doing a lot of things. Yes. So there is a lot of technology which is not digital. And why am I passionate about this? If women have nothing to produce, they will have nothing to market online, okay? If you, most of our women are in the villages, they are farmers. And if you've been to the villages like many of us do, you find there's even no production to sustain that family, to feed, okay? So if they have nothing to feed themselves and they're asking you who is going to visit them, what are they going to put online? What are they going to market on smartphones or on digital phones, whatever the things are? I don't know, I'm not an IT person. So one, women need to have what to sell. And for them to have what to sell, we can advocate for simple technologies at that level. Okay, so that we move away from the hand hoe, which takes the whole day, to something mechanized, which someone can handle with a liter of petrol, and then we see if we can expand that acreage for that time. Then when they have more than what the household needs to feed, then they can market it, and that will be it. And then one last thing, maybe the second last, is land is identity. I know we talked about land in terms of security and everything. Land is identity. That's why you can easily talk about women accessing jobs, women accessing positions in parliament. When it comes to land, whose land are you going to take to redistribute? That's another thing we need to think about. But largely this debate on women, we should do, I think, focus on women objectively. I can just give a simple example. There are many men who have been in parliament ever since the NRM came to power. But you have a debate on women MPs have overstayed. You never have that debate on men. Why don't we say MPs who have overstayed should all leave? Thank you.
I'm glad you said your last point, if I manage to return, because we're running out of time. Just as you speak, you could also give some of your last words, but if there's more time, I'll return. So, Damali, please, speaking to how well do we prepare women for leadership, but she reminded us about the aspect, can we also look at the leadership role a mother, a woman plays right from the household? And of course, most of the messages are like, are we also speaking to the ordinary woman, the rural woman? So how can we support women for leadership, since it's a space we are coming to as new entrants?
Thank you. I think the first point of school for leadership is at home, actually. I learned most of my leadership skills. I didn't know they were leadership skills, but I learned most of them from my parents. I didn't know I was being trained for those, but they led me and they instructed me. And later on in life, you realize actually those principles are the things that have guided me. You didn't have a name for them, but those principles guided you. So first and foremost, if you're a parent, please make sure you're instructing your child in a manner that they can learn these principles of leadership as they grow up. But then also this is, looking at class issues. That maybe I was in a certain home where parents had certain principles that they knew they needed to pass on because they knew I would need those later on in life. So how do we then also target, like Professor Sally keeps talking about, that how do we also target that informality? These informal people in the informal sector or people in rural areas, actually they have certain structures within which they work. They have the village communities. They always have these women associations. They have the mothers' unions. They have, so through those structures, actually leadership can be taught because they're incredibly organized, probably more organized than people in urban areas. They're very, very organized. So there are structures through which leadership can be taught. Though it doesn't also negate the fact that even though they are rural, they still, as parents, can teach leadership skills if they know that they can teach leadership skills. So there are two aspects that as a parent, you should definitely be inculcating those leadership qualities in your kids as they're growing up, because the knowledge you give them as a child actually stays much more When you're a kid, you just absorb everything. So those values they give you, you just grow with them. Then for the people in the rural areas, we can ensure that through those natural structures that they have organically are the same structures that we use. Those associations that they have, we use those. The church groups, we use those. For the you know, the mothers' unions, we use those, and then you can teach leadership skills and qualities through that. Then for the urban woman, we have these associations, you know. So the educated urban woman normally is probably a member of this school, this old school. They have these old school WhatsApp groups where they talk, and sometimes you're like, maybe we could use this old school WhatsApp group for something more valuable than we sending our birthday, you know, party pictures and our holiday pictures, you know, like Instagram pictures. Because I find that we women are in so many groups, but we don't necessarily use them for business, for growth, and we use them for, look at me, I'm pretty today, and you know, look at my hair, and exactly, my husband took me out. So and that's wonderful, but we could use it for also other things. We could, it doesn't have to be limited to that, and we could use them again also for teaching leadership. And then also, if you are in an organization, I'm in an organization, I'm in a leadership position, it should be incumbent on me to ensure that any females who are in my area of control are grown, they are mentored, they are, but not mentored in a way that, you know, I'm making them feel less than, because we also have those mentors who make you feel less than, and you'll never get to their level. It should be a mentorship of aspiration, a mentorship of you actually can be better than me, and I'm not a god, you shouldn't be worshipping me. Follow your path, follow your dream, whatever that dream is. Don't try to be me, because you can't actually. So you find sometimes we have these mentors who are put on a pedestal of perfection, and they're trying to teach other women to be that pedestal, that same image, and that's wrong. Everyone is an individual. You're a woman, I'm a woman, you follow your path, you follow your passion, and I can help you or give you whatever it is. I've learned how to follow my path, but my path is mine, your path is yours, and you should find your own identity, and great. But sometimes women, we try to be like, I want to be as perfect as Professor Sally, so whatever she does, she's done that hair, I'm going to do that hair. She's wearing African print, I'm going to wear African print. She's, you know, and you're like, no, now you're just copying, and you're losing who you are. So we need to ensure also the mentorship is like legit, is authentic. It's trying to ensure that every woman, every child, you're following your path and you're becoming who you really are and aspiring for bigger.
Thank you. I'll move now to engineer. There's been a lot of interest on Zimba women, and how do you prepare these women for leadership? How do we prepare women at the grassroots for leadership? And your parting shots.
Okay. So, like Damali has mentioned, preparation for leadership starts from the families. And for that, I'm thankful for my parents. My dad is an engineer, my mom is a businesswoman. I learned firsthand the engineering from my dad and then the business side from my mom. But I also recognize that I was fortunate, and I'm one of those few. However, with that in mind, I've made it my mission to be able to impart leadership skills to other women through Zimba Women. So our first class on the first day, regardless of the community, whether they're educated women or we are talking to the village women, the market women, the first class is introduce yourself. She says her name and she says it out loud enough for everybody to hear. So the thing we're always saying is, Brenda, speak loud enough so that everybody can hear you. Own your space, you know, the first day. Because if you cannot even own your name and say it with pride, then how are you going to lead? So that's first introduction, confidence building. Confidence building is a major part in teaching leadership. For those who are unfortunate enough not to have been taught from home, because my mother was a community leader, so I learned from her. But for those who are not, we teach that in our classes. The first day is just really talk about yourself, talk about what drives you and why you're in this business, and really the motivation behind. During COVID, our classes were very emotional because the women were breaking down in tears because, you know, some were forced to do business because, you know, they lost their jobs, their companies closed, or their husbands chased them because, you know, spent too much time at home, proximity and all of that. But in all of that, we learned that expressing yourself is very, very important. And a lot of women do not have not had the mentorship right from their communities in understanding that I own this space, I can confidently speak out, which is something families need to teach. And again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about religious leaders. Churches have big influence, so church leaders should help us on this one. Or mosques, or religion really is a very big enabler. So parting shots?
Yes, please.
parting shots is I'm encouraging women out there to adapt to digital. Use it for good. I know a lot of us are online. We pretend like we don't know what we are doing online. You know, you're abusing, cyberbullying, all of that, posting pictures of like random stuff. If you take advantage of the time that you spend online to educate yourself, to learn, to network, then we'll take advantage of the digital revolution to help ourselves and to help our families. Because you know, women, 90% of our income goes straight back to our families. So I encourage my sisters out there to adapt and not be left behind.
Thank you. Ms. Sakia, in a minute.
Thank you very much. I think for me, the biggest way to encourage leadership is let's dismantle that gender inequality, those patriarchal norms that say women can't lead, women, boys do this, girls don't do that, because that, even when you go to the village level, there's that work with traditional leaders, parish model. Now let's take that aspect of dismantling that gender inequality, those norms that say women can't do this, women can't do that, so that we break them. When we break that mentality, then women are able to say, okay, I can do this, I can do that, I can take up this leadership role and stuff. But also, after we've broken those gender stereotypes that women cannot lead, let's, especially in the grassroots level, at offices and stuff, let's work towards us in positions of influence, or us who are privileged. Let's continue to work to advance other women, to either mentor them to build their, like everyone has said, to build their competence, to really encourage them that they can be able. But importantly, the government has the overall objective to ensure that private organizations, private sector, government entities, not only at parliament, that we should have the 30% quota. No, let's ensure that even private sector, there's a rule that your board should be 30% of women, or women in leadership in your organization should be 30%. Let's take it away only from parliament, but to private sector, to home. My part in short is women, girls, let's speak up. If your rights are being violated, speak up. Hold your government to account. Do not be intimidated, because the government is here to serve you, and it is on us to hold them to account. Go use your voice to seek the justice that you need. Use your voice to seek out the information. Don't be intimidated. Speak and hold your government to account. Push for your rights.
Thank you, and Dr. Achan.
Thank
your
you very much,
shots.
moderator, and thank you very much, fellow panelists and UPC. My parting shots are that I think it is time for us to wake up as women and encourage fellow women out there, to encourage girls to participate in technology and provide meaningful ways on how to provide and build supportive networks for them, and also build their skills, like the engineers have said, because we need to encourage inclusivity and diversity at all levels. And for those of us in positions of responsibility, we need to hold one another's hands and encourage them rather than tear them apart. We need to encourage and support and inspire one another, so that together we can get to greater heights as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been a great, wonderful panel. Somehow the 2 hours just flew away, but I'd like to thank the listeners as well for being with us. With me in the studio, we have had Dr. Patricia Chan, who is the Deputy Inspector General of Government. I got that right this time. We have Her Excellency Brenda Kia, who is our representative at United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And we have Engineer Peace Kutesa, founder and CEO of Zimba Women. I think you should do an outreach. There's a lot of interest on Zimba Women. And then we have Ambassador Damali Sali, Chief Programs and Project Officer at PSFU. And then, of course, we have Professor Sali, Sarah Sali, Dean of Students, School of Women and Gender Studies. Thank you for being with us. And let me not forget to congratulate again Professor Sali and Her Excellency for those medals. You know, that's amazing, that's encouraging for women. I have been your host, Dr. Patricia Litho, Board Chair for Uganda Media Women's Association. I'm also Board Director at Vision Group. And it's been flattering to have Charles Odongo to step aside. I've accorded him a public holiday, but I'm glad I had the space. Nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Yes.